I'm going to start this ERC Zoom call with Gary Falter. And as I was saying, Gary, I've known Gary for a little while now, and he's just not only is he a wealth of knowledge, he's just been around really a segment of the industry that's very important to what we've been trying to do here at with the Empire Racing Club, and just focusing around introducing people and actually getting people very comfortable and aware with maybe some of the resources into getting into horse ownership, and maybe some of the resources that are out there or available to them, or even maybe to get some information on things that we, in areas that you think you may need a little bit more information before you feel comfortable to get involved. So Gary Falter from OwnerView, welcome. As I said, it's always a pleasure to have you on, on with us here.
Thanks, Christina. Good to be here. I appreciate the invite. And just give everybody a little bit of background of what OwnerView is and how it got started. Back in 2011, the Jockey Club hired McKinsey & Company to do a one-year study on the industry and to come back with some recommendations on things we could do, the Jockey Club, to build sustainable growth in the industry. And during that time, they interviewed over 1,000 owners from around the country about ownership issues. And they came back with 9 recommendations in 2012. And one of those recommendations was that we need to build some new tools and resources to help encourage ownership. What they found with those 1,000 interviews is a lot of owners said when they came into the business, they had very little knowledge. They didn't know where to turn for information, for education. They said it was kind of like a board game with no instructions. And so, there was a lot of casualties. We lost a lot of owners who came into the business that just didn't have a foundation of knowledge. So the Jockey Club decided, let's go ahead and start something up. We didn't even know what to call it, what it would be. And so that was in 2012. No, the end of 2011, and in 2012 we launched OwnerView.com. And so what OwnerView.com is, it's a website that has information from many different sources, from Equibase, we have trainer information, racing syndicate information, and I'll go ahead just real quickly and share my screen and just show you some of the content on OwnerView. And it's been around for, well, over 10 years now, and all the content is free. There's no charge. You don't have to register. You can register as an owner and put up your owner information, but it's not required. And again, everything is free, and that's the intent, that we have this aggregated information in one place so that anybody coming in the industry or who's already in the industry can go to this one website and research information. So I'm going to jump over to OwnerView and tell me if you can see this, Christina. It come up okay?
Yep, I can see it. Yep.
Okay, so you notice at the top, there's a pretty comprehensive menu. We have a lot of different content areas. We have stats on every active trainer in North America. We have racing syndicates listed. And what I found back in 2012, there was nowhere you could go to find a list of racing syndicates anywhere. Equibase didn't have it, TOBA didn't have it, the Jockey Club didn't have it. So now you can just click on the syndicate link, and it's going to give you an alphabetical listing of racing syndicates and their stats for the current year. And actually, it's 22 stats. It'll roll over to 23 in April. And so if you just wanted to click on one of the, and I'm going to click on Eclipse Thoroughbreds because I know Aaron's going to be here in a little bit. It brings up their statistics and how many starts they've had, how many wins, and so on. So you can look at their win percentage, their in the money percentage, how much money they've earned. Every racing syndicate has a profile, and this is pretty common throughout OwnerView. So trainers, racing syndicates, racetracks, we try to put up some statistics and then something about them. It's like a mini web page. So if you wanted to contact Aaron, there's his email address, his phone number, links to their website, the size of their stable, and then just some information about them. If you're curious about, well, who have been their best horses, the top 10 horses that they've had in the last 12 months. Nest, who was a champion filly, older filly, actually 3-year-old filly, made $1.7 million, grade 1 winner. Speaking Scout, and you just go down the list. So these are their top 10 horses, and you can notice their best win, they're all stakes winners. As far as, and so again, racing syndicates, we have as many as we know of listed on OwnerView, and we get emails on a pretty regular basis from new racing syndicates wanting to be listed. And the only requirement we have is that they actually have horses that are racing, because we can't put them up until they've actually had some starts. And you can see based on the earnings, we have some that have made, 70,000 and some that have made millions. And so and everything in between. So that's a good research tool. Looking up trainers is quite easy. You can just go in here and you type in a trainer's name. So I'll put in Pletcher. I click on Todd, and there's Todd's statistics from 2022. If I wanted to check out 2023, I just do the drop down, and there's his, and this information is updated nightly. So, through the day of racing, that'll be accumulated in Equibase, and it'll get updated nightly. If Todd wants to put up his profile on how to reach him, where he has a website, he can do that. His top 10 horses in the past 12 months, and his top 10 horses since 1991. So I'm not going to go through all these menu items, but you can see there's quite a lot. There's information about ownership, estimated training cost, developing a business plan, selecting your advisors, just a wide array of information. If you want to get into breeding and you want to research stallion farms, here's a list of stallion farms by state. And I'll click on Kentucky. You can see a lot of big farms listed. Click on New York, some of the top farms listed. And the same basic model, if you click on one of their names, it brings up their profile. So OwnerView.com has been around since 2012. And again, all the information is free and you can access it whenever you'd like. So before I jump off this page, I'll just ask you, anybody have any questions about what OwnerView.com is? Okay.
Hold on. Yeah, actually, so Gary, I have a couple of questions for you.
Sure.
First of all, what would you say is, now you've been doing this for a while, like I said, I think this is the 10th year, right, of OwnerView?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Last year was our 10th year.
Last year was the 10th. So what would you say is the single biggest concern or question that you get, just having done the owners conference, having spoken to people who potentially might get into, into ownership, just at all levels? What do you think is the biggest, let's say the biggest question that you always seem to get from first time or new owners?
Well, I mean, and that's the bridge we're trying to gap. And when we first started with OwnerView, and I'll talk about the owner conference also, the biggest concern people have is, where do I research information? Where do I find information about ownership? How do I know what training costs are? How do I know what vet costs are? How do I know what trainer to hire or what syndicate to join? And so we have all that content, even under ownership. And I'll click here. Here's questions that owners should consider asking, when interviewing a trainer. So here's, 10 different questions that an owner should consider when they're interviewing a trainer, or if you're going to join a racing syndicate. Here's some questions you need to think about asking that syndicate, because our goal with OwnerView and the owner conference is to help newcomers come into the business with their eyes wide open. We've had way too many owners come into the game. They wrote a bunch of checks. They hired people that they didn't know. They didn't know a whole lot about the industry. And after 2 or 3 years, just felt that this was too big of a hurdle. And so with the website and the education that folks can get from the owner conference, and again, I'll talk about that here in a minute, it's our goal to bridge that gap. Your members with the Empire Racing Club, I'm sure they've learned a lot by getting a snapshot of what ownership is. What we try to do is steer people towards the website and to the conference if they want to take a deeper dive into ownership. We've had people tell us over and over again, advisors, line yourself up with people people you can trust, people that are successful in the business, and help them help you be successful.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that's been the biggest pitfall? I'll use the word pitfall, because there have been some very high profile owners, and I'm sure it's happened at every level. It's not just, the owners that are dealing in the multi-millions, it could be also owners that are dealing with just, not in that bracket. Do you think that's been the biggest pitfall, is just not maybe aligning yourself with the right people?
Well, I think a lot of it is you don't know what you don't know. I'll use Jess Jackson as an example. When Mr. Jackson came into the business, he hired some consultants, didn't know them very well, threw a lot of money into the industry, and felt he was taken advantage of, and probably was to some degree. And what typically happens is, if you don't understand how hard this business is to operate, what the costs are, what the pitfalls are, it's easy for somebody to draw the conclusion that they were taken advantage of, when actually they weren't. They just didn't know how difficult the sport is. And so that's why it's important that newcomers especially align themselves with people they know and trust, and they get references from. And that's why I think the racing clubs that are out there, the micro share ownership groups that are out there, are doing a great service to the industry by allowing people to come into the business and dip their toe and get a flavor of what thoroughbred ownership is all about, without making a huge investment. There was a couple in Washington State that joined the Emerald Downs Racing Club, which was one of the first racing clubs, 8 or 9 years ago. And this gentleman and lady, I mean, they could well afford to own racehorses, but they put $500 into a few horses in the racing club, and found that they enjoyed it, had some success. And they went to Fasig-Tipton when there was a dispersal, and bought 3 horses in training. One of them became a graded stakes winner. The other one became a minor stakes winner, and the other one became a winner. Mm-hmm. But the point is they learned about the industry, and they learned about ownership, and they learned what things they liked and didn't like before they made that huge investment. And they got lucky right off the bat, and they're still in the business.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the luck does help. But to your point, Gary, I think you make a very important point here. We have actually several of our members that have gone on to invest in some capacity in racing. So whether they bought a small share, they partnered up with somebody else. We just did a survey. So we saw that we do have a handful of people that have gone on to actually invest in the industry. Mm-hmm. But what I found was very interesting. We've pretty much experienced just about everything. I think everybody who's on this phone, on this call right now, can tell you we've experienced, I mean, maybe not just about everything, but we experienced a wide array of things throughout this time. And we have also exposed we tried to never hide what was happening behind the scenes, even if it wasn't pleasant, or, horses get hurt, there are things that happen genuinely that, it's not glamorous, but that it does happen in racing. And I think it opened people's eyes to some of the things that can happen. So that's why I'm asking you, because obviously it doesn't matter what level of in the industry you are. It's not always going to be, we bought 3 horses at the sale and we won a graded stake, right, Gary? It's going to be, sometimes it's going to be the flip side of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can have $10,000 claimers and have a lot of fun and success. And we all know the highs and lows of racing if you've been in it for a while. Horses need to be laid up periodically. They get injured. Sometimes, sadly, they have to be put down. If you all have time, go to YouTube and look up Jim Rome's keynote speech. When we did the owner conference at Gulfstream Park back in, I think it was 2017, Jim Rome was our keynote speaker, and he talked about the highs and lows of the industry. And there were a lot of newcomers in the audience, and talked about how his horse Shared Belief, who was a Derby favorite, had to be laid up because he got injured, and then he came back and he won a bunch of graded stakes races. And then Jim's going on to his radio broadcast show with ESPN, gets a call from his agent who says, hey, the colt's going in for surgery. He's got colic. I'll give you an update when he gets out. And Jim talks about how he goes on his radio show, does his radio show, takes a break, gets a call back from the agent who called him back and said, I'm sorry to tell you this, Jim, but we lost him. He said, what do you mean we lost him? He had died on the operating table. And Jim talked about how, man, I closed my door and I started crying. He said, I haven't cried since I was a kid. And the point being is he talked about the highs and lows of the industry and how, you can have a horse that'll win many, many graded stakes races, and then the next day you don't have him anymore. And, him and his wife took a little break from the industry and had to regroup, and they're still involved, but it just shows that the highs can be very high, as Len, who just had the Eclipse Award champion, and the top 3-year-old filly in the nation. And then we know that the lows can be very disappointing.
I mean, we've experienced that. We lost one of our horses too. And I think, unfortunately, I don't know how to really express it, but we did have the horse happened to be a claiming horse. I don't think that really that had anything to do with it. I think some people, how can I say this? If you haven't been around racing for a long enough time, sometimes you might be tempted to think that was, oh, well, it was a claiming horse. That's not really the case. That it just happened. And, as you said, Gary, it could be a stakes horse. It could be any horse. Like, that's, again, unfortunately, it's part of the industry because we're dealing with a living creature. But again, what we do to try to mitigate that is important as an industry. When we look at aftercare and all of the mechanisms that are in place right now within the industry. But I also think that just being responsible owners and trying to do the best thing by the horse. And I think that's important too, Gary, right?
Oh yeah, and those claiming horses, those are the warriors. Most of the horses end up in the claiming ranks. We know that, and just really appreciate it when trainers do the right thing by those horses and know when it's time to retire them and give them a second chance at a new career. So 2012, that's when OwnerView came about. Fast forward to 2014, we decided to launch the first annual Thoroughbred Owner Conference. I told my boss, I said, we've never had a conference in this industry dedicated to owners. There are a lot of conferences that go on, but nothing dedicated for thoroughbred ownership. So he agreed, hey, let's look into this. We got Keeneland to come on board, and we held the first annual Thoroughbred Owner Conference at Keeneland in October of 2014. Had over 200 owners from around the country attend. Gary Player was our keynote speaker. We had Miss Penny Chenery there as a guest speaker, had fabulous panels and speakers. And so that launched this thing, the Owner Conference. And we've held Thoroughbred Owner Conferences every year. We did the in-person from 2014 until 2020. We had to take 2020 off because of COVID. And so we decided, well, heck, we can do this thing via Zoom. Everybody is doing Zoom with COVID. So we launched the virtual Thoroughbred Owner Conference in 2020, and it went exceptionally well. I was never a big advocate to do the conference live streaming. I felt that we get more value when people are together. But the amount of people that were able to benefit from attending those online panels was far beyond what we've ever done in person. And so in 2020, we did that. In 2021, no, in 21, I'm sorry, we started that. And then we carried it on in 22. Last year, we were at Saratoga with an in-person conference, and we did 7 online panels. And this year, we're going to do 10 online panels starting in a week from tomorrow will be our first panel with Len Green and company. And we'll have a online panel every month from March to December. And they're typically the first Tuesday of the month. I think we've got a couple of them scheduled for the second Tuesday because of some conflicts. And they're all free. They generally take about an hour. If you jump over to OwnerView.com, here, I'll just do it real quick while I've got a moment. We have a link for the owner conference. And then we have a link for the schedule. And you'll notice March 7th is our first panel, accounting and tax considerations for thoroughbred owners. And there's Len and Aaron Yagoda and John Green, and I'll be moderating that. And then in April, we actually have a panel on handicapping for owners. That's a topic that owners have asked us over and over again. Hey, let's have a topic about handicapping where you can handicap not just a race from a betting perspective, but also handicap races where your horses are entered. And then if you scroll down in May, we're going to talk about, the importance of having a business plan. June, preparing for race day, a jockey race preparation, and so on. So we've got 10 panels scheduled. And again, they're all free. We do them live, 2:00 in the afternoon Eastern, and we record all these panels because we know not everybody can be available at that time. And we end up with 100 to 150 live attendees, and we do Q&A at the end. And then we get about another 300 to 500 viewers to the recorded session. So you're all very welcome to join that. One thing we ask is to register, so we have your email address so we can contact you with the Zoom link. So just go to ownerview.com, click on the owner conference, and there's a registration option there, and it's free. You just have to put in your name and address and email, and I'll get a notification and you'll hear from me.
Gary, what's typically the most popular panels that you hold annually? Do you, because I know that you guys switch it up. It seems like there is some variation year to year, but what is typically the most popular?
Yeah, we try to change them up every year, but every year I bring back this whole accounting topic because it's not all that exciting, but people flock to it. It's the most attended online panel that we've done the last 3 years. So that's very popular. We have veterinarians. We're going to have 2 veterinarians this year. I'm going to actually go to Rood and Riddle, and we're going to record a couple surgeries, and we're going to show those surgeries on the Zoom call, and then we're going to talk about them. So the veterinary panels are always very popular. When you get somebody like Dr. Bramlage, who is just internationally known, he's doing this one this year. The jockeys are always a lot of fun. So we'll have a jockey panel. Every year we do a jockey panel. And then, just talking about buying horses, selling horses, pedigrees, conformation, you name it. And I do want to point out to everyone that on that link on our website, we have the entire library of the past 17 panels we've done online. And you can go there and watch any of those panels at any time. So those are all free and they're available, and we'll keep adding to that library as we do more panels. But I don't know if that answers your question, Christina, but seems like accounting, jockeys, and veterinarian are 3 of the most popular topics we cover.
Interestingly enough, those have been the most popular, even when I did the podcast for TDN, but also with the Empire Racing Club. Always when we're doing something on any of those 3, aftercare tends to be very popular with our group as well, because everybody's very invested in it. And, clearly that is a subject that people really do find very important. But I love that you guys are doing the handicapping, but from a different perspective, because I can't tell you how many times over the years I've spoken to, we all knew the trainers. Many of the trainers were handicapping the races. And I know Len could probably support me on this. I know Kieran McLaughlin, we would always talk. He would always tell me about the Ragozin sheets, like he's always looking at the Ragozin, numbers for, horses that he's running. And I think it's smart because in terms of putting your horse in a space, potentially having an idea how they stack up with the rest of the field. I think maybe people don't realize how important that is.
Yeah, so we're going to spend the first part of that panel just talking about that. You know, how do you handicap a race that your horse is entered in?
Yeah.
You know, and just kind of get an idea of how you think the race is going to unfold. And then we'll get into some of the variety of betting options.
Mm-hmm. Does anybody have any questions?
It's like Len does.
Oh, Len does. Okay, Len?
Yeah, I just want to emphasize again how important it is. Okay, the cost of the horse is about $3,000 a month. Okay, so that you really, if you're going to enter a race, you want to enter a race in which you have an opportunity to make money. So certainly handicapping it and using those tools. And it's amazing sometimes when you go down to the paddock, okay, to listen, to see what the instructions are, to see which ones have actually looked at the race and plotted it out, not only whether you have a good chance to win, but where you should be in certain ways. It's the most valuable tool I think there is.
I agree, Len. You know, Len, it's funny that you said that, because in years past, I spent a lot of time, I spent quite a bit of time on the racetrack. So I would speak to a lot of the trainers, you know, behind the scenes, not on camera. And what I always found interesting was the correlation between when I would speak to certain trainers where I knew they were paying attention, like they kind of had an idea what was going on in that regard, like they were actually looking at a race, versus the trainers who were like, no, I have no idea who's running in that race. And there is a correlation between the success of those trainers. You know, it's not a mistake. Like, I think if you're paying attention to, again, to Len's point, how you can position your horse in that particular race, because you kind of have a better idea of their ability, I think that's huge. I really think that's huge. So I think that's a great panel, Gary. I think, and it's I think it'll be an insightful one.
Yeah, it should be fun. You know, we've had so many great panelists over the years, and I remember George Bolton talking about just how, you know, he's had some success in the industry. And he said it wasn't just luck, it's a lot of planning. And he says having a good business plan and staying with that plan and not, you know, varying too much. Our chairman, Stuart Janney at the Jockey Club, he gave a speech at one of our conferences to all the different owners. And he said, you know, somebody he knew, business associate, came up to him and says, hey, you know, Stuart, I love the idea of getting involved in horse racing. He said, I'd love to buy some race horses. I'd love to breed and race some. He said, I'd like to buy a farm at some point and have my own farm. And he said, I'd probably like to pinhook some horses, buy some so I can resell them for a profit. He says, what do you think my chances are for success? And Stuart said, not very likely. He said, it would be very difficult for even a experienced person to go into all those different areas. Said, you know, pick an area or two that you want to focus on and stay with that. And, you know, I've known an awful lot of people in the industry that have done well, and a lot of them, they have a plan. Doesn't mean that they don't change their plan accordingly, but, you know, have a business plan and, you know, stick with that plan until you want to change directions, but not to take on too much too soon.
And I have to add one more thing, okay? I had a horse, okay, I had a good chance to win, and Empire had a horse, had part of my horse that also, and I invited the people from Empire that if either horse won, they can come into the winner's circle. And of course, the horse won. So I think you ought to add that to your list of things.
Well, and it was a stakes
Absolutely.
race, and it was at Saratoga, Len.
Yeah, just a few other things.
Yeah, I mean, that was like huge for us that day. But yeah, definitely. Gary, I think, you know, a parting word, unless anybody else has a question here that they want to ask you, you guys can unmute and you can ask Gary. But is there any parting word, like in terms of just this upcoming season, what you're looking forward to with OwnerView, and just in general, in terms of maybe the conference or just anything with the website?
Well, it's something I'm very pleased to say that in the industry, we've tried owner initiatives many times. TOBA's tried it, Keeneland's tried it, Fasig-Tippin's tried different owner initiatives. And I'm very pleased that OwnerView is, after 10 years, is still around. And the fact that the Jockey Club and all the sponsors that we have and all the attendees we have, you know, it just shows that McKinsey was right on, that we needed some new tools, some new resources, you know, some things where owners can focus on ownership and you know, all the things that goes into it. You know, it has been around this long, and I'm very pleased that's the case. I feel pretty confident that it's going to be around long after I'm gone. And you know, again, if any of your members would like to participate in the online conference, we start next Tuesday. Just go to the website and register. It's all free, and it'll stay free as long as I can keep it that way. And you know, because I know owners, we get hit up for charges for everything from bandages to day rates to everything in between. So it's our hope that we can keep this virtual conference free to everyone. And, you know, again, just try to raise the knowledge base for existing owners, for newcomers, and everyone in between. Because I've had many owners who've been in the business for a long time who have emailed me and called me and said, I've learned a lot from these conferences. I'm going to attend them every time I get a chance. So it's not just for newcomers, it's for everyone, and just hope we can stay the course.